I feel that engineering is now an exploration degree. It's a degree where you explore yourself.
That's the most important thing. I mean, there have been so many times during these 3 years where I was like, okay, I have no clue how to do this. This is an idea that I have.
If a body kinesthetic person or having an intelligence, will that person be able to do it? Yeah, they can do it if they really, really, really work on it.
I have a friend who was an amazing football player. He also went to the nationals when he was, I think, 13 or 14.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Beyond Conversations. Until today, all our conversations on the show have been about how to get ahead in your career, how to get into the university of your dreams, how to be an entrepreneur, an engineer, and so on. To sum it up, they've been about academic and professional development, especially for college students and fresh grads. Today's episode, however, is going to be fundamentally different. It's going to be about the mind. We are all aware of the fact that the years in which we attend college are super precious. It's quite likely that it's the first time we deal with incredible head on competition and are interfaced with the professional world, which is why college years can be tricky and intimidating. It's a journey of the transition from teenage to adulthood, and many people find that it affects their sense of self in very significant ways. So today, we are going to talk to Mansi Karanskar, a psychology practitioner who also happened to graduate with a computer engineering degree back in the year 2000. She was previously an IT analyst with TCS and shifted careers in 2018 to follow her passion in psychology and mental wellness. She has been serving as a consulting counselor at PICT Engineering College in Pune since July 2022, providing counseling to around 200 students and organizing workshops on mental well-being for students and faculty. She operates MindFit Counseling Services, offering counseling both offline in Pune and online to clients in Australia, China, and various parts of India. With 4 years of experience teaching counseling psychology topics at the Institute of Holistic Healing India in Pune, she also conducts soft skill training for engineering and polytechnic students, along with faculty training programs across technical colleges in Pune. It's an honor to have her on the show.
Let's go into how to identify your specific intelligence.
Yeah. So, see, we are doing this for IEEE, so all of the engineers, right? And which requires a good amount of logical mathematical intelligence.
But again, especially I think in India, there is a great force towards people to go into medicine and engineering, despite of them having certain different intelligences. So I think this is a question that's relevant because so many times I've heard that engineering is like matriculation in India. So you can go ahead and do whatever the hell you want, but right now, first get an engineering degree.
Yeah. So that's I feel that engineering is now an exploration degree. it's a degree where you explore yourself. Because most of the times I would say as soon as the student enters the field, in the first semester also they are disillusioned.
Yeah.
What are they into? Because when they are selecting the career choice or the degree they want to do, they do not have complete knowledge of what they are getting in. Either they have been pushed into it by probably my friend is doing it, so I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Or my parents are engineers, so I'm doing it. Or probably they were looking out for a different course, but that they did not get admission in that course. So, okay, the next backup is engineering. So, such students are really clueless about actually what does engineering do. So, for them, or not only for them, I think for everyone, engineering is an exploration degree. And what comes after engineering is what they really want to do.
Yeah.
But how to identify that? Again, I do, ask it, how do you identify this? what do I want to do?
Yeah,
I'm going to link it to the intelligence.
right.
now.
Yes.
Yeah, you are going to ask
Yeah,
something.
that's where I was moving to. How to find your specific
Yeah.
intelligence and match what you want to do with it.
So you have to now look at now I'm going to talk about the intelligences, and then we are going to talk about how to associate it with what degree you are doing. Right? The introvert, intrapersonal people or logical mathematical people have an ability to sit for hours to do something.
Yeah.
They can sit for hours and focus and be more attentive, right? Now, coding requires such kind of
Yeah.
discipline.
Yes.
So, if a body kinesthetic person or having an intelligence, will that person be able to do it? Yeah, they can do it if they really, really, really work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then what can they do? They can be probably good at managing people. Or the interpersonal intelligence if they have. Managing people can be a good skill set. Leadership qualities. Teamwork.
Yeah.
Right? Now I have to identify that what is my strength. Again, going back to self-awareness.
Yeah. Let's.
So your intelligence is going to help you to understand that what kind of personality I am. Am I somebody who will sit it at one place? Am I somebody who has a very large attention span? That is, I can sit for hours and do coding. I can resolve problems. I'm very good at.
Yeah.
Then your next is very clear, right? You do full stack development or you know that. Now, many people who I talk to aspire to go into designing. They have very creative and artistic kind of intelligence. That intelligence I forgot to tell you, artistic intelligence. This is another intelligence. And they have artistic intelligence and spatial intelligence. Spatial is about visualization in space, 3D, 2D. Now, even if you are in engineering and if you have this kind of intelligence, UI, UX,
Yeah.
right? Maybe web development. I'm not sure about web development, but UI, UX, product design,
Yeah.
graphics. So these are the fields which might, fulfill your craving for, that interest which is there with your career choice which you have chosen, right?
Yes.
Then again, what else? What else I was? Being a podcaster,
Really?
right? Being an orator or being an actor. Actor is again about expression, right? You have to have a good intrapersonal intelligence to become an actor.
Yeah. That is true.
If you look at it, if you identify your own intelligence, then it is easier for you to navigate your way. And also, looking at the career forward just as a developer may not be the only route.
Yeah. Just to, take a little different standpoint on this. So, I have a friend who was an amazing football player. He also went to the nationals when he was, I think, 13 or 14. But then at some point, the people around him were like, "Oh, yeah, okay, you're a great football player. What next? What are the choices that you have? You cannot be a football player." And that's, I think, a lot of people with these different kind of intelligences are told that, there is no way for you. You better conform to the degrees that are standardized in South Asian culture. What do these people do?
Let us look at two examples here. One is that person has landed into a degree course like engineering or medicine.
Yeah.
Okay. What does any sportsman, what does a sportsman learn on the field? It's a team sport or it can be a single sport.
Yeah.
Right? Like tennis could be a single person sport.
Yeah.
While football could be a team sport. which requires a lot of agility. Like, let's just stick to football example. It requires a lot of agility. It requires quick thinking.
Yeah.
Right? It also requires aggression.
Mhm.
It also requires mind reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and this is cultivated on the field itself. Also, one more very important thing is failures. You can't win all matches, right?
Yeah.
You can't win all goals. So what you learn is to move on to the next.
Mhm.
Right? Now, all of these qualities may not be, cannot be put into your resume.
Yeah.
These are your skills, life skills.
Then
Right? Now, do you think these life skills will be helpful for that person in any career choice?
I do, yes, definitely they will.
Either, in case if you land up into a career choice which is not probably of your liking, how do you use these qualities which are your, if you are self-aware, you will know these are your qualities, and how will you use these qualities in the career choice which you are,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
that's true.
So, if that person is a fighter, it's going to be easy for that person to, even if something doesn't work out, they will be able to, bounce back.
Mhm.
Right? Or they might have a team spirit. So if they are not understanding anything, they might just ask around, okay, teach me.
Yeah.
Now, these are very hidden life skills. They are not very, these are covert, not
Mhm.
covert-like skills. But how can one person, if you land up into a career choice of not your liking, but you still have these skill sets, how can you use these skill sets in your chosen career?
Right.
This is one way to look at it.
Mhm. Yes.
And another is that choose a career which is aligned to your
Intelligence.
skill
Yeah.
sets. Yeah. So but that will only happen if you know that, this is what I want to do. So there are a lot of fields in sports also, like sports engineering is
Yeah.
also there. I think there's a course called kinesthetic something also, I think.
Mhm.
It is related to engineering, bio. So the thing is that if you are choosing engineering, it might be your first step. Uske baad, what do you do after that?
Well, yeah.
You can do sports management, right? You already have an engineering degree, which teaches you discipline. I'm always say this because though it is an exploration degree, engineering does teach you a kind of a certain level of discipline
It does.
more than other.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, it also teaches you hard work because you have so many things to do parallelly. So you become a multitasker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now these discipline, multitasking, probably also being Jugaadu.
That's the most important thing. I mean, there have been so many times during these 3 years where I was like, okay, I have no clue how to do this. This is an idea that I have. I have no idea at all how to do this. My project teacher or mentor has already finalized it. And then somehow you figure out, how do I get there? So that's very important. You just think about something and then somehow find a way and then it gets done. I think that's one attitude
Yeah.
that engineering does build in you. When you're like, let me just set the goal and figure out how to get
Yeah.
there.
Exactly. So you become a problem solver, right? You use creative thinking,
Yeah.
to out of box thinking. You use all of that. So engineering degree does teach one all of these things, which are going to be useful in any career choice
Yes.
later on. Even if they don't continue engineering, if they go into investment banking or they go into business administration or anything, design. So that's why I feel that engineering is an exploration degree, but it teaches you a lot of skills.
That is true.
And if you identify your intelligence during this exploration phase, you can decide your post-graduation.
Yeah.
Which is more aligned with your intelligence and your interest.
Mhm.
And then one more thing, Aditi, all the other people I'm silent now. अभी engineering हो गया.
Yeah.
अभी तुम कुछ भी
Yeah.
करो.
Yeah, that's very important. Speaking more again
Yeah.
about this whole intelligence thing, so especially for people who have a different intelligence that's more powerful. I think we spoke about it once in I think one of the previous questions where we discussed, you're someone who has a certain high intelligence quotient in a different intelligence, and you're comparing yourself, or you have peers who have a very, very high mathematical logical quotient. They are very averse to syntax. And I mean, they're just, they're naturals at it, and you have something different. So, again, there are two factors to fitting in. How do you fit in with these people? Should you fit in? That's again another question.
Cool.
So, when you have a different intelligence, there are two ways to go about it. Either you say that, okay, let go of this, whatever I had, whatever I've built, and probably the 10 or 12 years prior to my engineering life, and let me just try to build this, let me really, really work hard and build this intelligence that this next person has. Now, you could either be successful in it, or you could not be successful in it because you probably don't have that high of an intelligence in the logical mathematical space. And maybe that could bring some kind of, disappointment with oneself that, look at them, they're doing it so easily. And look at me, I am really struggling with it. So, yeah, that's one way to go about it. Or the other way that I see people doing is they're like, okay, I know that this is my intelligence. This is their intelligence. Let me just work on my intelligence. And I'm not going to worry about when, probably they get a placement or they get something that they want. And I'm still, further down in my journey. I'll be okay with that, and I'll just work on my intelligence. Is there a way to balance this? How do you navigate in this very confusing space?
I think this is very contextual.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? There is no right or wrong. Even if I do not, let us consider a person who does not have very high intelligence in logical, mathematical, and has some other intelligence, but the other settings in his life do not allow him that liberty.
Yeah, I think that's
True.
the major concern that most students have, that they don't have that liberty at this point in life. So they really need to do whatever is the common choice.
Yeah, yes. So because it is very contextual, some people who do not have who have financial responsibilities, they have no choice. They do not have the means of going for further education. For them, getting a job or getting placed
is a priority.
Is highly important. Right? And then they have to work on their skill sets. There is no choice. But I would like to add here is that if you keep on comparing yourself with other person, it's not going to. There is perspectives here. How is one person? That the intent again. That I'm going to learn, or I'm going to compare, and using it as a learning experience. That I want to grow. I want to do this, or I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling inferior, and that's why I'm trying.
Yeah.
So if the intent is correct, you will strive harder, and you will be you will inculcate all of those skill sets. But again, how much? It is not going to be possible to match up to a person whose intelligence is innately high.
Yeah.
In mathematical, that domain, it's not going to be. But realizing that, okay, this is my threshold, this is my best.
So, again, do you think it's logical to beat yourself up about maybe not matching up to that person who does have that innate intelligence?
Yes. Because, see, again, I'm going to come to that context, is that if you are aware that I am high in a certain kind of intelligence, or I'm average in a certain kind of intelligence, and I am okay in some other kind of intelligence, if you're aware, then the possibility of feeling inferior is lesser.
Yeah.
Because you know.
Accepting that you are different rather than, saying that I am lesser of a person, I'm inferior. Just accepting that, okay, I'm
Yeah.
different, and probably
Yeah.
I'll find these
Yeah.
kind of opportunities later on.
Yes. That if that doesn't happen, then you might feel bogged down. You might feel sad. And this is one question which comes to me many a times that, ma'am, I'm putting so much effort, but I'm not getting the result. And that other person studies one night
And
before the
they-
exam and they fail it. This context needs to be understood. If you look at as a statement without understanding the context behind it, it's going to be very tough to understand that probably that person has a very fantastic memory,
Yeah.
right? And you have an average memory, but you have fantastic oratory skills. So your linguistic is excellent, while that other person stumbles when they want to express themselves. If you do not look at yourself as a unique personality, different from the next person, this is going to be difficult, man.
Yeah.
So understanding again the self-awareness part kicks in.
I think that's the solution to most of the questions we've gone with so far.
But it is not going to happen at this early grade. Like in the emerging adulthood, it's more of an exploration phase than the. But if you start exploring, self-awareness comes.
Right. Moving on to a completely different set of questions. So when you're in an engineering degree, it's a 4-year course. Every new semester you have 5 new subjects to deal with. So overall, the academic and industrial requirements from engineering students are that they should be able to upskill really fast. They should pick up new concepts, new technologies, new probably programming languages really, really fast. So, I mean, the speed of learning, how to enhance one's speed of learning, the quality of one's learning, because I think in the Indian context of learning, this is something very common that, you'll just mug up everything and then probably in a few days you will completely be wiped out of your mind. Which is when you're doing a professional degree, that's something that shouldn't happen because you really need to apply these concepts that you've been learning about. So how to improve one's learning process, how to make it robust, how to learn quickly as well as effectively. Are there any methodologies that you can follow or practice to be able to do this?
So let me go back to those intelligence again. So along with the intelligence, there are different learning styles.
Yeah.
Okay. For example, for a person who is body kinesthetic kind of a person, the learning style might be movement.
Yeah.
So when you are, when you want to learn something, you are moving, you're taking, you're facing probably. That may be the learning style of that person. Or for somebody who has a very high musical intelligence, probably listening.
Yeah.
Might be one of the learning styles. For somebody who is linguistically high in intelligence, probably words.
Yeah.
Words mean a lot. So for them, probably writing or reading.
Yeah.
Aloud.
Yeah. That helps.
That would help. Now going to the naturalistic intelligence kind of a person, maybe just sitting in open air, in nature.
Yeah.
And why I say this is that because I have met people who have tried these kind of things and they have worked with it. So the learning style should be aligned with the intelligence also so that you are more receptive.
Right.
Visual or auditory. Like musical intelligence, see, music again is related to your auditory or mechanism.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe listening, watching and listening to a lecture might be a learning style. For somebody who has high spatial intelligence might be, mind maps.
Yeah.
Having written it on the board and, kind of capturing it, visualizing it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true.
Now, we are never taught all of this. We are taught only, memorizing.
Sure. Yeah.
But there can be different inputs for memory,
Right. Yeah.
right? Our sensory organs are the input for our memory. And there are 5 sensory organs. Our eyes, our ears, our mouth, our nose, and our touch body, right? We have to use all of them. We can't just use our eyes as the only input or medium,
Yeah.
right? So when we speak out a louder concept, that could be a learning style for a person who has very good auditory skills.
Right. Yes, that's true.
So, you have to identify what is your learning style.
Mhm.
Once you do that, your learning process can enhance. Because now you are doing something which is first nature to you.
Yeah, that's true. You can't expect to have one particular method that's, one size fits all.
And again, there can be different learning styles and you might need 2 or 3. You might use 4 or 3
Right.
together. So reading and writing together, or watching a video and listening,
Mhm.
or audio listening,
That's true.
or making notes.
Yeah.
You have to know which works for you. Only after you try it, you will know.
Right. So trying everything and then, identifying what is your method of learning effectively.
Yes. And then using that and making it more, sharpening it more and more so that it becomes quicker, that process is quicker.
Mhm.
So this could be one of the main ways of enhancing your learning process.
Mhm.
Learning process is a way of doing
Mhm.
this, but we have to understand that what all other skills are required, right? So the learning methodology should be such that while learning academics, one should also learn skills like team building, leadership, creative writing, reasoning, decision making,
Mhm.
assertive communication, public speaking, and presentation skills, and most importantly, agile thinking. Right? So, I think in engineering degree, all of this is not done as a separate thing, but your projects, your events, your club activities, your group assignments, all teach you all of these things
Yeah,
innately,
that is true.
right? So, if you want to enhance your learning process, participating in all of these things, taking initiative, putting yourself out there for learning,
Mhm.
like, being part of events,
That-
that's another way of probably enhancing your learning skills. Because it's not just technology which you are learning, right? You are also learning how to learn that technology.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest questions of our generation. How to learn how to learn.
Yes, but we are learning all the time. See, when you are take part in events, you are learning how to organize an event or how to present in that event. So you are kind of sharpening your learning process.
Right. It's subconsciously.
Though because your brain is at that time learning. It doesn't distinguish whether you are learning A or B. It knows you are learning.
Yes.
So participating in different kind of activities so that which gave you space to learn.
Mhm. That's right. Moving on to our next question. So engineering, especially third and fourth year, is a really, really demanding time because on one hand you're doing your academics, you're doing multiple projects, you're trying to build up projects for your resume, you're looking for internships, you're giving tests for internships, you're maybe doing some kind of an internship. So it's a very challenging phase in terms of the variety of tasks you've been given to do. How to keep oneself centered, how to manage oneself and one's time when you're batting on multiple stages.
Okay. Uh, so what I have witnessed is that there is a difference in the psyche of students who are in first year, second year, and third and fourth. First year students are mostly, looking for excitement and entertainment and all of that. But the second year, some of them get an idea that, I need to, kind of now get some direction. Right? But if you don't get that direction in second year, third year, you are completely busted. And you come in for it.
Yeah.
Because there is a pressure of internships. Then there is upcoming placement season.
Yeah.
Soon. So one has to understand there is how to manage time, how to manage your task, how to again create the time boundary which is required, and how to not get carried away and get into a habit of procrastinating. So there is a stark difference of people who in second year, kind of gear up and slowly start building their skill set. While so by the time they come to third year, they are little less anxious than what their peers might be who have not done it in before.
Yeah.
So what happens there is that there is immense sense of time loss. There is guilt which comes that I did not utilize my second year well.
That's true.
And now third year seems like that I have to do it now.
Yeah.
And you're not ready for it. Because third year, as you said, there is internship. There are a lot of things which need to be done in fourth year. Right? And if you're not ready for it, then it might cause a lot of anxiety.
That's true.
And at times that anxiety might even lead to depression. Which is again going to take, once you get into depression, it takes a while for you to come out. So in order to avoid this whole domino effect, it's better to, kind of start aligning from second year what you want to do. I don't know whether, second year students are aware of this or not, but then second year is mostly again like first year for some students.
Yeah. So I think there are two ways to think about it. There are people who decide that, okay, this is still earlier on and I don't really need to be focused. But what does happen to a lot of people is that, okay, you are still exploring, you are still looking at maybe 4 or 5 technologies, you're still working on something or the other, you're still learning, maybe one thing doesn't work out. So even though sometimes you try, you still don't find, that one space where you have skilled yourself that much that, in third year you're like set.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, if it is an extension of the exploration of career, then wonderful, because at least you know what you don't want to do at times.
Yeah.
And that is good start because you have removed things from your platter and you have fewer things to think.
Yeah, that's true.
So let us look at it one at a time. Let's look at the time management. Right? Lot of complaints are there that the tasks which are there might not be of interest, and then that's why you don't want to complete or we don't want to do a task because it doesn't interest you, and you kind of put it on the back burner. And then when it comes that you have to submit it, you have to work on it.
Yeah.
So task aversion is there. You have to understand task aversion, and that is also related to procrastination. Things which we like, we do it fast.
Yeah.
Right? But actually speaking, if you look at time at time management, the rule of ABCD needs to be done. Okay, now what is A, B, C, D? A stands basically for all those tasks which have high consequence.
Really?
Like if you don't do it, it is going to probably lead to fail. You will fail in your exam.
Yeah.
Or you will probably not be able to participate in some internship interview or question or operation. Right? So these are very high consequence
Yeah.
tasks. If these tasks are not prioritized as A, as the must do's, and are put onto probably C as might do, may do, then directly there you are going to be impacted.
Yes.
And most of the time, what happens is that the tasks which are difficult are pushed down rather than pushed up.
Yeah, that's true.
So the rule of A, B, C, D, E means that A are all those tasks which have high consequence and must do's. Must do by you, not by company. B stands for all those tasks which are medium consequence but high priority. But those tasks should not be touched until all the tasks in
A
A
are done.
are completed. Right? C are all those tasks which probably do not require your time right now, which you can park for later on.
Right.
Right? But suddenly, because they are easy to do and they have low consequence,
Yeah, you go and do them.
you feel them they
And what happens is when it comes to C type of tasks, there are usually many of those small little tasks. So people have this tendency of micromanaging. Okay, I'll do this, tick, 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 done. But then A, B, big tasks are there.
they are pending, right? And they are the cause of anxiety, basically. Yeah. Then comes the D tasks, which are something which you can delegate, absolutely delegate. Those tasks which do not require you to do it. They can be delegated easily to somebody else,
Yeah.
but you feel the need to do it. And they are not very the consequences are on you.
That's true.
And E are all those tasks which absolutely you can just throw them away. All those absolutely not needed tasks. For example, maybe you are in during exam time and you remember that you need to find something.
Yeah.
Or you need to organize your cupboard, your clothes. Now, is that required at that time?
No.
You do it as a relaxation, fine. But you make it A is absolutely not fine.
Yeah, that's it's. I think for people who have a tendency to always, my cupboard should be organized. My whatever it is, I should not be sitting in a mess. So those people do have that tendency. But one more thing is, see, for people who think that, okay, I need to keep everything clean, I need to keep everything organized, they are quite likely done with A and B tasks because they are that much organized. So when they're organizing their cupboard, they have already organized most of their life.
Probably. Yeah. But if you don't follow this A, B, C, D sequence and you do E, D, C, B, A, then certainly you're going to be in a bad schedule problem. So never do B before you have completed A. Never do C before you have completed B.
Right.
So this is about time management. Next is we talked about not just time management, but how to keep yourself motivated and how not to get pressured.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if you manage time, the pressure is lesser because you are less anxious. You are more sorted here.
That's
right. And that's why you are less restless. So if you manage your time, other things will fall into place.
Right.
But again, managing time in itself is a big task.
That's true.
So manage your time and motivation is the next thing which will follow. But sometimes it is motivation. If there is no motivation, that's why I'm not doing. It's like a
Cycle.
loop,
Yeah.
right? You need to break that and start with small tasks. I always say that if you are stuck in this loop, you need to break that loop by doing some small tasks and bringing more certainty in your routine, bringing more consistency in doing tasks, small tasks. Then I'm not talking about time management of ABCD, but I'm talking about getting into a groove of doing things.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of fitness motivation people also say. Whether you're motivated or not, you just make a schedule, do the actions. So if it's about let me go running on day one, just get up, tie your shoelaces, get yourself out of bed, go take the first few steps, and then you'll find yourself running.
Yes. So no action, any action is better than no action, right?
Yeah.
Or just contemplating about action.
Yeah.
Most of the time, all the action is done
In
in
the
the
head.
head.
And it goes on.
And not in
Exactly. And you get stressed about doing the action in your head.
So if you are stuck in the loop where you are completely in inaction mode, then the first thing is to do small things. Get yourself into action. Get yourself into a routine. Get into some kind of consistency. Small consistency is going to help you to do better in the next task. So that is your motivation. And I always say that if you do a task, even if you do half of that task, give yourself some kind of appreciation that, okay, it is better than inaction. Right? If we don't motivate ourselves, and if we keep on saying that, okay, but you did not complete the task, so you deserve no appreciation. You are going to go back to the inaction that, okay, I'm not going to do it. So if you do a task partially also, appreciate that it is better than inaction. It is better than doing nothing. It is better than zero.
Yeah.
Okay. That is how motivation is, I would say mobilizing your motivation. Just go and sit at your desk, open your whatever you want to do. Just keep it open in front of you. Look at it.
And then you might as well do it.
See, that might be the next step. But what happens in reality is that, oh my God, it's too much to do. How am I going to do it? And if I sit to do it, whether I will be able to sit for so long, whether I will have enough attention span. So everything is anticipated in the head. And that actually stops you from doing it in real action. So many a times, you just live in your head and not in reality. And that causes a lot of fear, that causes a lot of anxiety. To an extent that people get panicky.
Yeah.
And then they end up doing nothing but scrolling, screen time. Because the moment you do that, life feels good.
Yeah.
Because you are in inaction. You are in inaction, but there is something which is going on your telephone, which is likes of others. So
you've taken
out
the responsibility of doing the action yourself, and you've put it on somebody else's shoulders.
And then you are living vicariously through others. You're not living your life through your own, but through others.
Right.
And that can be it gives you an instant relief. It gives you instant distraction. It makes you feel good for a while.
Yeah.
But the moment you stop, things are back to what they were before.
So, especially for our generation, it's very important to identify, okay, what is the work that I'm doing and what is the work that I'm not doing. I'm then probably either thinking about it or I'm completely just looking at other people doing the work.
And I think a lot of attention is also, what a lot of memories or brain activities involved when you're doing that, because it's mindless. It's absolute mindless. And one can feel drained out after doing that. Because your brain doesn't identify, what it is getting is all those signals.
Yeah.
It is processing your feeling. That's true. So it is really very dangerous, I would say.
So, going on to our next question, again, third and fourth year, or the year that probably you're passing out from your degree. I think one of the main pressures is probably either getting a job or getting an admit into your next course, whatever it is that you've decided. So, I'll just quote our TNP officer. So, what he said was that you will likely be dealing with failure multiple times in this period. Probably in 1 week, there will be like 3 or 4 companies visiting our campus. You will or will not get shortlisted. You will or will not go to the next round, the second round, third round. You'll probably fail at your very last round, or you'll fail at your first round. But there is no space at all for you to wallow in that grief. Next day, you need to be ready for the next company. That is how it is. And this is, it's not a forgiving process. It is an inherently draining process, and it does not allow you to sit down and, just sit there in your grief. How does one deal with probably a string of failures when this whole situation comes up, and how to keep yourself going after that?
How to deal with string? Again, you have to understand that it's going to create a certain kind of emotion, a emotion probably where you will doubt your ability, or emotion which is going to make you feel hurt or disappointed.
Well, that's true.
And
very likely that, so for example, if I'm disheartened by one thing that happened, if I carry it to the next thing, because what happens is, let's say I failed at one task, and I go and do a second similar task, there is that fear in your mind that I failed the first time. So the second time you are doing it with the pressure of doing it and the fear that you didn't do it the first time. How is it possibly going to happen the second time?
So you have to first identify the emotion which you're feeling. I know that there is not, like, it's not like you have a lot of time to
process it,
but process it. But if you don't look at that emotion, you are going to carry it to the next task. So look at how that, maybe you did not get to the interview round. Look at it that, okay, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling immensely angry at myself, probably. I don't know, I goofed up in that question, or whatever it is. Look at it. Don't turn away from it. Look at it. What happened? Look at it. Feel sad. Feel sad that, okay, I failed. Feel sad for that. But you have to understand that, okay, I have felt sad. I have felt enough sad. Now is the time to keep that sadness away, and now look at how I need to deal with the next day. What you're doing here is that you are not avoiding confronting your emotions. You're confronting them, but you are also kind of mindful that you don't get into that victim mode. Or pity mode for yourself. Right? You're mindful that I'm going to look at my emotion. I'm going to look at it for a while, feel that sadness, maybe cry, or maybe, talk to someone. But after that moment, I don't have time. I need to get back and start studying for the next thing. So there is a less probability, if you have sorted your emotion, that you carry that fear into the next task that you're. So when you mindfully move to the next step, that is where you analyze your mistake. Do your due diligence.
Right.
Yeah. what happened? Where do you think, and you have that innate sense that probably, this was the question I made a mistake in, or this was in that questionnaire, this is where, I didn't do well or didn't fare well. I need to. So due diligence is needed and then work on it.
That's true.
Yeah. But the key here is that do not turn away from feeling sad or disappointed or looking at that emotion which you feel after failure. Look at it. I'm going to give you an example here that when you see a child, when you see a child, do you go and if the child falls down, you will probably say something to that child that it's okay, you will be fine. Let's look at your wound. It's okay. Is it? So you're giving that wound and that fall some kind of attention. Yeah. And then we'll say that okay, it's okay now. Now let's go ahead. So you're giving that attention, loving attention. I would say loving attention to that disappointment, and now you are ready for the next.
Yeah. That makes.
Which you will probably do for your friend.
Yeah.
But may not do for yourself. Yes?
Treat oneself like you will treat others.
So loving attention, I think that is very important, loving attention to your emotion, but not pity it. Look at it lovingly, give it attention, move it. Step up. I think that is what, I just want to summarize. So how to deal with failures was something which was the question, right? Yeah. So in the shortest time, this is what can be done.
That's true. So let's go to our last question. There's a lot of talk about manifestation, how to make yourself lucky, the law of attraction and all of these things. But I think there's also a discussion about, is this even true? Does this actually work? What is your opinion on this whole question of the law of attraction? Are there any scientific or truly achievable ways of making yourself lucky, especially as a student and for early career professionals?
It's an interesting question, yeah, because when luck is something either someone believes in luck or someone doesn't believe in luck at all.
Yeah,
like there are people who are divided. Only hard work works, but some people believe that hard work and luck go hand in hand.
But in most situations, you do see that panning out, right? Some people just tend to be in the right place at the right time.
And some people always are probably not in the right place. And I would say probably always facing some or the other hurdles and struggles.
Yeah, that's true.
So we are not going to go into the spiritual aspect of that. But, we are going to look at only one dimension. Is that manifestations, do their manifestations work? See, for manifestation, you can probably manifest something happening, but unless and until you don't work towards it, it's not going to happen.
That's true.
Right? So it's not as if manifestations happen without any action.
Yeah.
Action is required. And that action, if done or if has a support of luck, then maybe, it seems as if it was only due to luck that it manifested.
Yeah.
But we have completely ignored the action.
Yeah.
So action needs to be done any which way.
Yes. That's true.
Not just relying on luck. So you manifest something, you start working on it. But I would say here is that many a times the consequences of the actions hold us back. Or the result of the action.
Right, yeah.
So I'm doing this, and if I don't succeed, then what will happen?
Yeah.
Right? But if you say that I am doing this and there is a possibility I will succeed. Right? So what are you doing here? You are manifesting success or you are manifesting failure.
Yeah. Right.
In your thoughts, not even, you're not even speaking it aloud, but in your thoughts, you're deciding. So when you say that I am doing this and I'm going to try my best in doing this without worrying about the results of it, you are kind of setting a path, probably in the direction of success and manifesting whatever you have decided to. But if you start off that I'm going to do this, and I know that I'm not good at this, I'm going to fail probably at this, I will, what are you trying to do here? You are setting it up.
You're setting yourself up for failure.
You're putting conditions which are going to be, you're setting it up for failure.
Yeah.
So there is no formula as such. It is with the intent, what you need to have, you need to get into action. It's not going to be just rely on the luck. You have to get into the action. You have to get into the action with the correct intent that I am going to give my best. The results have never been in my control and will never be in my control, however, how much hard work I put in.
Yeah.
Because maybe the next person has put in more hard work, is more intelligent, is more capable. So the results of me getting selected were never as such in my control. But action is in my control. Whether I put in efforts or not is in my control. So I personally feel that luck is just a factor which, we all use as what more should I say that, luck cannot work if there is no action.
That's true. But I mean, ever so often you also come across people who did put in all the action and then, somehow it didn't work out. And
Yeah, that's what when I said now that you probably put in your 100%, but somebody else had put their 100%, which was higher than your 100%.
Yeah.
Right? And also the results or the person who was selecting probably was looking for X than you.
yeah.
But then does it mean you discredit your efforts? Does it mean you discredit what you have put in?
That is true.
I would only say here is that keep on doing the action without thinking about the results. Give your best, step back, and let the universe take care of other things. See, this is again, I don't go into the realm of that, the universe and manifestation. I don't want to talk about it because then that opens up a very different dimension about it.
Yeah, I think the ending not here was really nice. The last thing that you said before, not going to that realm. It was a great way to summarize, putting in your actions and then leaving the rest to.
Yeah, just step back. You just step back. Yeah, I don't know. There can be a lot to be spoken on this, but I think this should be okay. I would just like to end with this, that it is very important to have emotional competence. It's not taught to us.
And what does it mean?
Yes. So there are 4 steps of emotional competence. First is to be able to identify your emotion. You need to know your emotion, right?
Yes.
I'm angry cannot be the emotion. Like I am hurt or I'm disappointed or I am let down or I am feeling bad and that's why I'm angry.
Yeah.
So that is the outward expression. Anger is the outward expression. But anger is normally not the emotion. Identify the emotion first. So emotional competence, my first very important is that identify the emotion which you are feeling right now. Okay? So that you are aware that why you are feeling stressed or why you are feeling anxious or why you are feeling so sad. So identify that. That probably if that emotion involves other person, they express that emotion to that person. Because if you don't effectively communicate your emotion, if you keep it to yourself, if you repress it, that is going to come out in a very sad way afterwards. And probably snowball.
Yeah.
So effective communication of emotions is second part of emotional communication. That also comes with maintaining that emotional boundary we talked about. Managing your emotions and effectively communicate. Third is that when you are in that phase of expression, I always say that fair fighting. If you want to express your emotion, express the emotion you're feeling at the moment related to the situation which is happening presently. And do not bring the entire baggage along with you. Because the whole present situation related emotion is lost in that, and all you're talking about is what all the residue.
Yeah.
And probably the situation might be small, but then it just builds up into a mountain.
Yeah.
So that again is a part of emotional competence, that knowing that this is from the past, this is not from the present. And this is from the past, not even related to the person I'm talking to, but somebody else. Operate from the present is probably which is needed. Right?
Yeah.
And most importantly, the last point would be that it's okay. It's okay that you have genuine needs and you're expressing it. And you need satisfaction of those emotions. If you don't express it, nobody will understand without you sharing it.
Yeah.
So, talk about it. Tell them. Because many a times, how can I express that? What will the other person feel? Everything is based on the approval or acceptance of the other person.
Yeah.
And most of the emotions are repressed at that time. So it's okay to express, it's okay to put it out assertively without thinking about, whether I will be hurting the other person or pleasing the other person. Seeking approval.
Well, that's true.
How can I express it to my teacher that I have not understood a concept? Because that teacher might feel hurt or may shout at me.
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It is about you not understanding. If you don't tell it to that person, how will you learn?
That's true.
So emotional competence, I think, is required, which can be built during both stages, emerging habits. Because when you go out into that real world, you are expected to know all of this.
Yeah.
There is no simulation. That is the real world.
True. That's another concept we had never heard of. This was a really, really insightful, interesting conversation. And I hope that everything that we've discussed here will go on to help everyone who is, a part of our audience, and will help them to operate in a better way. Will help them to manage themselves better, and just be better people, engineers, students, whatever they are aiming to do at the moment.
Thank you for this opportunity, Aditi, and the whole team of IEEE. And it was a pleasure to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.